right. Hopefully we're rolling here. Inside the Dugout, cubadugout.com. We're just getting ready, hopefully, for the announcement that of the 30-man roster for the WBC. Just bear with me for a second. Just testing to see how we look here. Oh, not seeing the background. Okay. Bear with me for a moment. So we are rolling up on 7 o'clock here, and hopefully Telerebelde. Looking to our good friend Por Lagoma via Facebook, who should be providing a live stream of the event as it happens in Havana. I'm here in Ottawa right now, where it is snowing. Wish I was in Havana covering this, but and a load of Benoit in the chat. WBC hype, yeah, there is definitely a lot to be hyped about as we get ready for it. Yeah, just bear with me for a moment while I get set up. All right. Just bear with me for a moment. I'm not seeing my background or that video here, so... I'm not the only one having technical difficulties. Okay, looks like that stream has gone down, but it looks like there's just some theatrics going on at first. Ah, the beauties of live streaming. All right. So while we wait for that to come back online, so for anybody that hasn't had the chance, if you head on over to CubaDugout.com, I did a breakdown on the 50 players that made the preliminary list. So obviously, there's been a lot of back and forth since it was originally announced, or even going back close to a year ago when rumors started to break that Cuba was considering extending invitations to players playing in Major League Baseball, also playing in other professional leagues that had left the island not under the best circumstances. Obviously, this is not something that they have been open to in the past, but with diminishing returns in their performance in the World Baseball Classic and in international tournaments overall, for once it looked as if the Cuban Federation started to understand that in order to compete, they need to have their best Cuban athletes, and unfortunately, a lot of times they are not based in Cuba. So, the pivot point, and I've also written an article on this a couple months ago, was when Andy Ibanez, who is a player that recently signed with the Detroit Tigers, although he was optioned to AAA. It looks like he's going to start the year there, and then hopefully work his way back up to the big club, put his name on the line and said that he was willing to join the team, and then a few other big names added their name to the list as well. Luis Robert of the White Sox, Yoan Moncada, and a number of pitchers as well. So, of the 50-man list, when that was released about a month ago, and as mentioned on the website, I do have a breakdown of all of the players that were in that discussion. We do see that it's definitely going to fortify the team. It's going to make them. It's definitely going to make them, a better squad overall. Because walking into this competition, the expectations weren't high. Quite frankly, it's still going to be a tough go, getting out of their pool as they. Oh, sorry. What do we got going on there? Disregard that. So. Now, you have to look at the draw that they're in and figure, as much as they are up against a team that's become the nemesis of theirs in the Netherlands, they've got a pretty good chance at the very least to advance to the next round, which would be in Japan. So 2 teams advance from each round, and so if they advance to Tokyo. Obviously it gets tougher as you go along. Japan is going to be a loaded squad. No doubt about it. So right, here we are. I don't think we need the volume on that, seeing as I probably won't understand three-quarters of what's being said, as it were. But nonetheless, here, let's go into sources. Perfect. Yeah, just let me bring that up in the window over my shoulder there, so at least we have a vague idea of what's occurring, sort of in real time during the announcement. Again, thanks to Por La Goma. He's a gentleman originally from Havana that is now based in Florida, but is able to travel back and forth. Juan K, who puts out a lot of great content. He's come onto the scene in the past year or so, and his numbers are growing. He's putting out a lot of great work, and a lot of times is the one who provides the live feeds of broadcasts that are going on. So thanks to him for that, and actually hoping maybe we'll get to meet up at some point. It is not inconceivable that Cuba could end up making it to the semifinals, which would be held in Miami. Again, that might be asking a lot, but we shall see. Yeah, and I see some comments. Lotta Benoit, Netherlands are always strong. For those who aren't aware, obviously they draw players often of major league caliber, or in the majors from the Dutch Antilles, and so they've even for a team that, if you look and say, might just be on the outside of the top 10, is dangerous, and so every one of these pools is going to be tough. And as mentioned as well, Taiwan, exactly, Chinese Taipei, is a talented baseball nation as well. Perhaps doesn't have the high end talent, but plays a solid team game, and you can't sleep on a lot of these historic baseball nations. Let's put it that way. Obviously, we do have an increasing number of burgeoning nations, and ironically that. Canada might almost fall into more of that category, but even then, I think Canada's going to be in a tough pool. But with they might not have their full complement, but it's definitely going to be a strong team as well. And we have some pomp and circumstance going on to start. So just checking in with the Twitterverse here. And testing the volume. Test one. There we go. And let's go into the chat here. And so currently a number of the players are trading in Havana at Estadio Latino Americano, which obviously the photo behind me is of that from a previous trip. And actually just want to say a happy birthday to Frank Camilo Moreon, longtime catcher for Industrialis, who you may see in some of these clips. He's been working with the catching corps and working in their preparation for this. So Frank, one of the top defensive catchers in the perhaps in Cuban history, and certainly in Havana, and a player who has represented Cuba in the World Baseball Classic. So likely acting as a good liaison, a bridge between sort of the that previous generation now and some of the younger players. Though he's played with a number of the players that will make this squad as well. And if people do have questions in the chat, feel free to ask away. If you think that there are going to be any surprises, any players that you were surprised were left off the 50-man list, players that were included that you weren't expecting, and sort of what you think Cuba's chances are overall, and especially now that they've, as mentioned, fortified with some top professional talent, both from the major leagues and some that had applied their craft in the majors, perhaps moved on to other professional leagues. And so as we can see, that the 50-man original list, it looks like everybody is in attendance, unless they're completely giving it away, and this is just the 30-man that's sitting there. But I think that looks like it's the 50-man contingent. And right now, Pedro Lazo, famous pitcher, probably the top closer in Cuban history for Pinar del Rio. Famously, helped Cuba in the 2006 World Baseball Classic, and I believe it's a famous clip of him striking out Alfonso Soriano. Came in and was a workhorse out of the bullpen for them when they advanced to the semifinal game, and ultimately falling to Japan in the initial World Baseball Classic. So I see that there was definitely some chatter. Yosmani Tomas and as I mentioned in my article, was speculated up until the 50-man roster came out, and as has seemed to be with some of the selections and with some of the communication, whether he was ever truly confirmed or not, it seemed as if he really wanted to, and so both sides are kind of pointing fingers. The response from Armando Johnson, the manager, when questioned why he was left off of the 50-man roster, was that they felt that with Luis Rober on the roster, that there was no position for Tomas, which makes no sense. Tomas likely would have been either right field, first base, DH. I don't think anybody's ever going to confuse him for a center fielder, little yet with the range and the skill that Robert has. And I see that some speculation on Yasiel Puig as well. Puig's a difficult situation, and whether or not he chose to keep a low profile with everything that's been going on between recent allegations that had risen. Some he was able to fight on, but the current situation where apparently he's being investigated for gambling or racketeering charges. His contract has not been renewed in Tokyo, and right now it just seems like everything circling around him is a little bit toxic. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cuba even wanted to stay hands off on that. Uh, Good shot of a good friend of the dugout, Yoelki Squibert, who just led the Elite series in batting. Speculation that he might make the team for being a versatile young outfielder. Of course, the politics have played into the whole thing, but as well baseball politics, and by that, in trying to find that balance between some of the major leaguers that have put their their name out there, while also trying to allot some spots to players within the Cuban National Series as kind of a dangling carrot or as a reward. Also, you'll see there's going to be a good mix of young arms. Another friend, Yoani who figures to play into the starting rotation. But be a lot of a mix of young arms that are currently plying their craft in Japan, and so the strength might prove to be the bullpen. Although again, there's been some conjecture, at least some ink has been spilled that the plans for the pitching staff look like they might employ some of the pitchers out of as starters that you wouldn't expect. So we shall see. Obviously, we can't completely speculate on that this far out, and also without knowing who the final, I believe, 14 pitchers is what the average team is going to roll with. What those 14 pitchers, who they will be. There is likely an opportunity, as we see, working on the catching drills, as mentioned, kind of the advisor overlooking that is good friend Frank, who we see on the screen here. Again, Feliz cumpleaños, amigo. That speculation is that Jose Quintana, who is probably not the biggest name, but has had success, is most recently was in AAA, and isn't known for his glove, but definitely is a stronger bat, and especially for a tournament like this, could play. So there is speculation that the backup catcher's role could go to a younger catcher, especially hopefully someone who provides more defensive skill, with the expectation that perhaps they won't end up playing that much, or they might be a kind of a late inning replacement. Ariel Martinez, who we see, is a player as well that's recently signed with Nippon, the Ham Fighters in Japan, after playing with Shinichi for the past couple of years. Originally a catcher. Surprisingly, they felt enough, obviously, that in his bat that in the Japanese league they've moved him into left field and some first base. If he could, if they felt comfortable enough with him behind the plate, even though he hasn't been catching so much over the past couple of years, would represent an upgrade there. But the speculation is that he will be either vying for the first base job or some playing time in the corner outfields. And again, we've got quite a bit of preamble, as I'd love to tell you I'm completely familiar with this gentleman, but apparently he's a famous Havana music artist. So at the very least, they are trying to add a little bit of sizzle, a little bit of pomp and circumstance, which is kind of in the usual television presentation. It might be a little bit lacking, but we're making some steps forward. As right now we're handing the microphone to Livan Manello, who is a young reliever from Pinar and who has been lights out as a setup man in SoftBank with Japan. So one of the players that I mentioned of the young arms plying their craft in Japan that they'll probably rely on heavily in the bullpen. And next, talking to Alfredo de Spain, who is the all-time leader in World Baseball Classic home runs with 7. Another player that has spent extensive time with SoftBank in Japan, and has been a slugger over there. Perhaps some people argue perhaps the greatest non-MLB slugger to come out of Cuba, and figures to get the majority of the DH at bats for this team as a veteran presence, and as that gap, or as that bridge between the MLBers, the NPBers, and players that still reside and return to the island. And obviously Orestes Kindelan, all-time leader in home runs. As we move to another musical piece. Let's tweet out to a few of the other followers that seem to engage in the World Baseball Classic space. If you're not already following the page, I haven't been as aggressive with videos over the last little bit. We're working on that, and especially as the World Baseball Classic looms, and hopefully be able to provide some insights. And it's a number of the players I have chronicled and captured in action, either via photo or video, over the past few years. And will be interesting. As I said, the expectations are perhaps need to be tempered, and so right now Cuba is listed as the number 8 country in the WBSC rankings. For those who don't know, the WBSC is the organizing body that, in conjunction with MLB, runs the World Baseball Classic, but sometimes MLB gets a bit too much credit for the influence that they do have. Whereas the WBSC runs a number of events throughout the year, ranging anywhere from U12 up to obviously the World Baseball Classic and the Premier 12, which they try to run. I believe it's every 3 years, which points are awarded. So within that, you'll see that the rankings are a little bit different than you might think going into the WBC itself. Whereas Cuba is ranked as the number 8 country in the world right now, which moves up from where they've been in the last little bit. I actually think that if the roster that we think we're going to see here comes to fruition, they push up to that number 6 spot. I think that the United States are a very dangerous team. Dominican Republic is very strong. Then you get in Japan, Venezuela, Korea is likely in the argument, and so it really is a testament to how deep the overall field is. That being said, once you get out of the top 6, I doubt that any of those nations have a chance to really win. However, there are more and more countries that can do some damage. And so we've got Cranston Snord, who's watching along and wants to give a shout out, and is wondering if this is anything like cricket. I see that Loda Benoit. Imagine how nice Jose Fernandez would have looked in a Team USA jersey. Would have been tough competition. Obviously, the young pitcher originally from Cuba, who first broke in with Miami and passed away, unfortunately, I guess about 7 years ago now. Had a chance to become perhaps the best pitcher ever from Cuba. Although, obviously the majority of his development was in the States, so would have been intriguing to see if given the decision which country he would pitch for. But unfortunately, we will never find out. Yeah, Jose Fernandez, a tragic tale of perhaps too much too soon. Um, whether applicable or whether he's the poster child, oftentimes for some of the players, as tough as it is, catching up to fastballs, fast cars, fast boats, fast women, fast times are even tougher. So right now it looks like we perhaps have a Cuban tribute band to Devo performing. Let's see a question. Has Jose Abreu announced what team he's playing for? And so Jose Abreu originally had indicated that his preference would be to play for a unified Cuba. So that was roughly around the time that the Association for Cuban Professional Baseball, or what was it? The Association for Cuban Professional Baseball Players came out and announced that they were looking at forming their own contingent with an eye of basically putting a team into the World Baseball Classic as Cuban players, but not under the Cuban banner. And so Abreu was kind of not necessarily called out, but I think a number of players that were members of that movement or of that organization quickly kind of got to him and said, we'd like you to be on board with this. And so, not that he completely backtracked, but kept a little bit quiet, and especially as the chatter that professionals would be added, was kind of surprised that his name did not make the list of 50, and obviously will not be. Or the speculation is that no big names were added between that 50 list and now, and so I think it's highly unlikely we'll see P2 Abreu on the list. But if we're talking about for the upcoming season, obviously signed the big contract with the Astros, which to this point looks like it pushes Yuli Gurriel out of a job. Although over the weekend, it was speculated that he had a deal in hand with the Marlins, but that seems like it's stalled, and now people are coming back and kind of wondering where his market's going to go. And greetings, we've got a viewer from Japan. And Johnny, team has a weak pitching staff. I think that if you look at the bullpen, is a strength. So two of the gentlemen that you mentioned in Yariel Moinello and Radel Martinez, guys that have had success in the in the Japanese league. I think they are going to rely heavily on them. So we've seen that the rotation, although I don't know if too many countries are going to be relying on a true rotation in a short tournament like this, especially with one that has pitch counts. So the opening round, I believe, is 66, then it grows to 75 or 90. Especially if a lot of pitchers are going to be ramping up for their season in the leagues that they do play in. So I think that you're going to see a lot of opener strategy and a lot of quick use and quick runs through bullpens. And so teams with the deepest bullpens, I think this side of a major league ace kind of going 6-7 strong and just wiping people out. I think for most countries and Cuba included are going to be looking at trying to turn them into bullpen games. If that's the case, I think it does improve Cuba's chances. But there is no doubt that the pitching has lagged overall over the past few years, especially on the major league level. However, we do see again that pipeline of young relievers, and I think I posted a piece recently on Facebook, and that they are looking at more arms. Yeah. Yeah, and Johnny, you are correct. There has been talk that Yariel Rodriguez may move back to the rotation. I actually had the chance to see him pitch for Camagüey and capture him in action in the Cuban National Series. And originally, Chunichi, I think, had aspirations of using him as a starter. I mean, let's be real, every reliever is probably a failed starter. I think if using him as an opener, going for 2 innings, it really depends what kind of on the scheduling, I guess, and what kind of duration they're expecting out of relievers. Like, for instance, could you get 2 out of those guys each appearance out, and then kind of cut that game down? So, does it hurt that Yoan Lopez withdrew? I mean, it certainly hurts that you've got a guy who's I don't want to say had a massive amount of success in the majors, but obviously has pitched to that level and recently signed in Japan, so that's would have been another depth piece. I'm not certain how they would have employed him, but you can never have too many arms, and so where it hurts on that depth level, I don't look as that at that move as one that that breaks my heart. But again, you can never have too many arms. Oh, Ariel Rodriguez in question there. Carlos Luen Hernandez, one of the journalists. As we see many of the sites around Cuba, the Havana League. Wait a minute. I have a famous picture of me on top of the building here, on top of the Havana Libre, and before security came and kicked me off. So I guess I don't have the connections that we do here. Famous photo. Sorry, none of my photos are that famous, but I think you know what I mean. As mentioned, Lorenzo Quintana, player. Will Cuba play in Miami? I like their chances better now. I think there is a path. It's gonna be tough. So right now, starting in Taiwan, correct. I do like their chances. I think that first game, the very first game, is against the Netherlands, and as mentioned, have been kind of their nemesis for close to the past decade. Have been knocked out of, it seems like, just about every major international tournament by the Netherlands over the past decade. So if they can get off to a good start there, then I like their chances of moving to Tokyo. Yeah, and that is correct. So Yariel Rodriguez definitely had some issues with his stamina, and that seemed to affect his control. Whereas in shorter doses, he's really cut down on the walks, and turned into a very useful piece out of the bullpen. I think it was more an issue that his stamina didn't hold up against the better competition, so he wore down easier and was issuing too many walks. Right now, as we see, touring through Old Havana and very close to Obispo, a place that's close to my heart. And so, control does seem to be an issue overall. I mean, on the island itself, frequently we see a little bit more of an approach where guys bend don't break. So it's not that they're not necessarily afraid to walk guys. The strikeout walk numbers a lot of times are less than desirable, at least not eye catching, and so. A lot of times for the guys that move over to the Japanese league, that's the first focus is on trying to get that control up there, and so again we have seen a number of guys that have made that jump. Yeah, that is correct. So Yoeni Yera, a gentleman I've met a few times, and is has been the de facto ace in Cuba, especially with Lazaro Blanco leaving last year, and has had success in Mexico as well. So he's a guy that I look at and think, you've got to be careful how you manage him. That's why I think that if they're looking at a more of an opener strategy, he's a guy that you want to watch your matchups, but can get by in some guile. But I think against either some of the top nations or in a longer stretch will be exposed. But a guy that again as a lefty that's done everything for in the national series and for the Cuban national team. Will be a usable piece. And so it looks as if very unique way to announce the 30-man roster, which there weren't many. And Estrada, yeah, I think I like that. I think I like that alignment. Levon Monillo in the eighth, Radel Martinez in the ninth, or same thing. If you're going one inning at a time, I would love it if they could get more, but at the same time, I think they've got to be cognizant of sort of limits and the commitments to the Japanese teams. So especially to their Japanese teams, especially where their season will be beginning soon too. So now, while I was yapping on there, we saw the majority of the players that were announced, and obviously, so Luis Rober was one that was announced there. But that should be no surprise. Obviously, one of the bigger names, and still one of the players with with the highest upside in the majors, or at least from a Cuban perspective. And also, when the stream's over at cubadugout.com, the article that I have compiled with the list of 50. Okay, yeah. Sorry, just watching this in real time. Oh, good to see. Yep. Here's Belgraciel, another player with Japanese experience. Yoenis Cespedes. So there has been a lot of concern over whether Yoenis would be healthy enough to play. Yadiel Mujica, another player that played in the Yankee system. Aribel Arobuena, signed by the Dodgers, as was Yadir Drake. Diane Garcia, star in the National Series. Yohan Moncada, Yariel Rodriguez, Livan Moinelo, Raidan Martinez, Ilian Leyva, lesser known player, but that's had success in other Caribbean leagues. Roenis Elias, who's been on fire in the Dominican League and signed with the Cubs recently. Ronald Bolanos, another player with upside, and Yudis Reyes actually might be the first kind of surprise. Strade subscribing, thank you for that. And question of, does Yadir Drake have a spot on the national team? Yeah, well, obviously he's on the roster here, and I think that he's a guy that can give you a little bit of versatility. Either slots in at right field. I think he might end up seeing some time at first base. There's not a true first baseman on this roster, and so he's a guy that had repatriated a few years ago after signing with the Dodgers and playing in multiple leagues across the world, and came back to Matanzas and still does play, I believe, in Mexico, and when he's not in the National Series. And so I think between him and Araubarena, probably part of their negotiation of repatriating was to at least get a look on this roster. And I mean, both have played very well. Both played very well for Matanzas, and as mentioned in the other professional leagues. Yeah, and as mentioned, Ilian Leyva, great last year in the Mexican Winter League. He was a guy when the rosters were first announced that I wasn't as aware of, but looked and said again, kind of I think provides you with some of that depth. Yeah, the pitching staff, I mean, is not the overall strength. I don't believe, but it also depends. I mean, is it going to be good enough against a U.S. or a Dominican? Are they going to get that far? Versus, do you have enough depth? Do you have enough guys that are familiar to that have faced many of the Japanese players to face a Team Japan? Is that the objective? Again, right now the objective is just to get out of that first round. Right, so it looks like that is the end of that broadcast. And so, were there any surprises on that list of what we could decipher? Because it went by a little bit quick there, but it was pretty predictable that of all of the guys with MLB affiliations that had been rumored were there. A lot of the other guys that keep going on. I keep going on about Japan, and so we'll see. There's a few players, a few of the younger arms. And as Destrada saying, Japan and Cuba will play in Okinawa. I like the chances. I like them better than I did before. Obviously, I mean, the last World Baseball Classic was in 2017. Cuba did not perform well. It's a little disheartening. I mean, it was rock bottom in terms of World Baseball, in terms of WBC, and I consider a lot of the players that were on that team as kind of friends, and a number of guys have actually gone on and are in the minors. But that being said, I think it they realize that some changes need to be made, and that willingness to bring in some of the pro players, though that's not without its share of controversy. And is it half a step forward? one step back, however you want to however you want to define that. But at least at this juncture, a number of players are coming back. They're going to give Cuba a better chance. Does this grade out? Is it a one and done, or does it open the door for more conversation, for more change on the island, for more change in that approach, and for more players to get involved? We'll see. Um, you know, from a baseball perspective, I want to see Cuba have the best team that they have out there. I want to see every team, every country putting their best effort forward. And I think the WBC this year is going to be it's going to be pretty impressive. Again, I think that if you even expanded the top 10 of the 20 countries is pretty loaded. But even the next tier of 10 countries, some of them in there are not historic baseball countries, but it's growing there, and so that's good for the game overall. And excited to see what that turns into. So let's just see if we can go back, if that's cataloged, and see the do I have a favorite team in NPB? I don't currently. Obviously my awareness kind of grew with the Spain and Yurosbel Graciel and whatnot, playing with SoftBank, and obviously they were a dynasty, and part of that buoyed by the introduction of those players and the success that they have there. But both are kind of, looks like they're at the end of that, and SoftBank could be going into a rebuild. It's one of those things where I definitely love to get over and see some games, and shout out to Yaku Cosmopolitan, who on Twitter, and who I've collaborated with on a video before, who I kind of follow for more information on that. But what my biggest thing with MPB and what I want to see is, I want to see every player get the opportunity to play at the highest level that they can. And especially in the past year, when we've seen more and more Cubans leave, more and more players leave the island, and more of that's for lifestyle than anything. And I can't begrudge anybody for pursuing the best opportunity for them in this life. But for the number of players that that are getting this opportunity in Japan to go over, play it, and it's still an incredibly high level, make very good money, life-altering money for them on the island, and bring most of that back is one that I hope that more players get the opportunity to do. A few players that I look at and say that have recently made the jump and they have signed a major league deal. So I mean, it's not like it's all lost, but with the international signing period bonuses shrinking, and so if a young kid signs for $200,000, half of that is probably gone to an agent, or half of that's gone to taxes, then the other half's gone to an agent, and there's no guarantee of how far they're going to make it. So I do want to see that agreement with NPB expand, however that means, and I know that there will only be so many slots that are there, but just to see kids get a chance to go compete at a great level, and because sometimes people joke about it, and they'll as if it's a slight talking about Japan, but it is the second best baseball league in the world, and obviously a lot of incredible talent there, and a very passionate fan base. So thanks to everybody for checking in. I think that's gonna do it. I wish I had a little bit of a better plan coming into this, but I wasn't certain how that show was gonna go. But as mentioned, check out cubadugout.com. The article that I have up, I've made it so that it is, let's call it modular, so that basically it starts with 50, and then I can drop those names down very easily, so that'll be a lot easier to navigate and take a look at the at the 30 players that are there. So for everybody that watch along, and obviously we got a few subscriptions. Thank you for that. Stay tuned, and if you're on Twitter, always open to discussions there, and hopefully this won't be the last kind of look I do in the lead up, but getting excited for the World Baseball Classic as it appears a lot of people are. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll chat soon.